Good morning, America, and to our friends around the world, happy Friday. This is sort of a gift, an early weekend present. This episode that we're about to play, it's an interview from 2019 that we'd long considered lost. We still don't know where parts 2 or 3 are yet. We're going to try and find them, but it's a brief interview with someone that your Pod State co-founder, Nate Wellon, and myself, Davini, that we still very much admire this man. We both served with him at Walter Reed, the President's Hospital. Sadly, he is no longer with us, which makes it made it a little tough to hear personally, because I miss him very much, as I know the people that know him do. But it's an interview with Ian Haynes, who was a police officer in East Orange, New Jersey, metropolitan New York City for over a decade, and then was a soldier, United States Army, combat medic, and an LPN there at Walter Reed. And it's from, I believe, September of 2019, but regardless, a lot has changed since then. Probably clubhouse leader for understatement of the year, I know. But regardless, enough of me talking by myself. Just wanted to introduce this and it's probably going to explain for itself the relevance, and hopefully we find parts 2 and 3. Got more to come to you this weekend, but this was just to get things started in hopefully a positive light, because we do have a lot to be thankful for and a lot to be optimistic about. We do have the resources and the tools to fix virtually any problem that we can name right now. The issue obviously is the resolution of ongoing debate, and I hope this interview reiterates that point, that there are issues going on, but we can work through them, provided that we will come together, see the problem, and attempt to find some semblance of compromise, a path forward that sustains us in the long term, and does not merely provide short-term ratings and sensory gratification. But again, without further ado, the interview with Ian Stacey Haynes. I hope you enjoy it. Have a great weekend. So, as you know, my usual counterpart, Nate Wellon, has absconded with reality to Mother France. He's over there for a wedding, other first world problems he's going through. Right. So in lieu of his presence, I had the true privilege, in my view, of welcoming a friend of both, Mr. Wellon, and I, a gentleman who I still affectionately at times call Sergeant, but
oh my,
Mr. Ian Haynes, originally East Orange, or
originally Brooklyn, New York, but I was transplanted via my parents to East Orange, New Jersey. Yeah, East Orange, New Jersey.
And originally out of
Brooklyn, New York.
Okay. And your parents hailed from Trinidad?
Yeah, they immigrated from Trinidad and Tobago.
Who kept us out of America out of the last World Cup, as I recall.
You know what? You're asking the wrong guy.
Oh, no.
I'm not a sports guy.
Oh, it's not a question.
That. Oh.
It was a painful matter of fact. Painful.
Well, thanks for that.
No, it was a great. It was an example of hubris. It was such an embarrassing picture. We actually had players before the game that they didn't want to get their little white socks dirty. This is true. You can Google image this. And we're giving each other piggyback rides to our dugout on the Trinidad swampy field, because it had been raining.
The Savannah.
So don't you know, if there was ever a bunch of prima donnas that deserved to lose and not go to the World Cup. So, World Cup aside.
Okay.
So, out of Trinidad to Brooklyn. How long were you in Brooklyn?
We were in Brooklyn, my parents or me?
Were you?
I was born in 1969, and my parents migrated from Brooklyn in 1985, and then from 1985. The interesting thing is, I was a junior in Xaverian High School in Brooklyn, and they moved to New Jersey between my junior and senior year of high school.
How was that?
It sucked. Do you want to be a senior in a different high school?
No.
So what I did was, we lived in Jersey City. So what I did was, I was in my high school was in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. So what I did was, I commuted from Jersey City to Bay Ridge, Brooklyn every day to finish my senior year in high school.
So you were pretty much like lapping yourself. You were going to bed and then getting up before you went to...
Yeah, man. I would get up every morning. I would get up like 6 o'clock every morning. I would walk about 12 blocks from my house. I would take the PATH train from Jersey City to World Trade. Get off World Trade. I would walk underneath the World Trade Center when it was still there. God bless their souls. And I would take the double R train from World Trade all the way to Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. I would get off and I would take the B9 bus all the way to the last stop, and then I would walk 6 blocks to Xaverian High School.
How long did this process take one way?
Believe it or not, about an hour and 15 minutes. It wasn't so bad.
And the way back was about
the same.
But still,
not bad.
That's a lot of effort to go to high school.
Well, you know what? I had some great friends, and I had a great high school experience, and I just didn't want to leave my friends.
And were they aware of what you were going?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a scholarship to high school. I had a full ride to high school. I went to a private Catholic high school. It was considered the best in Brooklyn. And
how was that, though?
It was interesting.
Was it tough? I mean, the enforcement of standards.
Well, what was funny was Xaverian High School, and I don't want to bring race into this. So
but let's do it.
Let's do it.
Why not?
So Xaverian High School was predominantly a white high school.
Okay.
And there were only 4 persons of color in the whole institution. 4. And it was an amazing experience for me.
Is that
positively?
Okay,
I don't mean that in a bad way.
So you're not being sardonic?
No, not at all. I have some of the best friends in the world to this day. I still keep in touch with.
From Brooklyn? From
Brooklyn, and they've been spread out all over the world. And to this day, I still keep in touch with friends that I have from high school. And a lot of the friends that I had, some of my best friends, were in the World Trade Center the day that it got hit. A lot of them worked in Cantor Fitzgerald, and the plane ran right into Cantor Fitzgerald that day. And you know what? And no, I don't want to put a somber note on this.
No, but I know that obviously wasn't something precast, or that we had kind of said, "Hey, let's talk about this." But I was 17 years old, a junior going to high school in South Mississippi. Mm-hmm. You were there, and NYC Metro. Like, what was, obviously the world completely changed.
Yeah.
What was that? What was going on in your world at that moment?
Oh man, that day I was living in Jersey City. I was actually a police officer when that day happened, and woke up that morning and saw everything on the news, we watched it on TV and saw the towers go down, and a bunch of us actually reported to the police station, and we actually all wanted to get into vans, and some of us did, and we jumped into vans and we started heading over to the Holland Tunnel and tried to get the other side to see what help we could do, but
were you able to get through, or was it
no.
NYPD had everything?
Yeah, the Port Authority and everybody else had everything shut down, and they were like, look, we appreciate what you guys want to do, but there's just so much confusion over there.
Too many hands.
Yeah. That was just how the day was, and it was surreal, because imagine living in that area, and that was something, it was part of your landscape. It's something that you saw every single day. I mean, I grew up seeing the World Trade Center as part of my landscape every single day. You couldn't drive down, the Pulaski Highway, or you couldn't drive certain highways and not see the World Trade Center to your left or to your right, and it was right there. It was something that you saw. It was ubiquitous. It was right there.
So when you see
you took it for granted.
When you see it, say a movie or something, You've Got Mail, Tom Hanks is on, and you see that. I mean, what is that?
It's freaky. It's freaky. It's reminiscent, but it's sad at the same time. It's very sad.
And obviously,
I mean, I have pictures of myself in front of it. Anybody who lived in that area and lived during that time, who's in their 40s or in their 30s, at some point has a picture in front of, or has that in the background, and when you look at it, you just get sad. I mean, my brother worked in the building. My cousin worked in the post office right downstairs. My brother was supposed to go to work that day. He didn't. A friend of mine was in the tower on the roof that day. One of my very good friends. He wasn't even supposed to be there that day. He was home with his wife, and one of his friends had a contract to build cubicles on the 80-something floor, and he had the flu that day. And he said, hey, I don't want to lose this contract. Can you do me a favor, fill in for me that day? And he said, okay, fine. He got out of bed with his wife and said, hey, I'm going to fill in for him today. Kissed his wife, his son, who was like 3 months old at the time, said, I'll see you when I come back this afternoon. Traipses off to the World Trade Center. The planes hit. They tell everybody to go up to the roof. He goes up to the roof. He gets on the phone with his wife, Chris. He calls Chris. Says, Chris, I know what's going to happen, but I'm on the roof. While he's on the phone with Chris, the building starts to collapse while he's on the phone with her. And all you hear is static, 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 and then he's gone. Then she has to go across the bridge 2 days later to identify his body. Couldn't even recognize him. I mean, his keys were in his pocket, and his keys were bent in his pocket because of the force of. And these are one of thousands of stories just like that. Yeah.
The world obviously changed. I mean, aside from individual, everybody's world changed there. But then, aside from 2 significant wars that we ventured into as a country, the Patriot Act, surveillance became, you couldn't even go in the Statue of Liberty for how many years? a long time.
Oh my God.
I think they opened it up, a couple of years ago?
Yeah, a few years ago.
I still don't think you can go back on the Hoover Dam like you used to.
Yeah, I wouldn't even begin to tell you.
I mean, I went as a kid, but that was a long time. For whatever reason, I don't know why I wasn't by myself in the middle of the Hoover Dam or anything. But no, everything changed. Obviously,
everything changed. I mean, simple things like walking into St. Patrick's Cathedral. You used to just be able to walk into certain places in New York City and take it for granted that nothing was going to happen. Now, you walk into St. Patrick's Cathedral and it's just not the same. The innocence, even as a worshiper, is gone.
So, and I mean, this is really a backhanded compliment for New Yorkers, the ones I know would appreciate this sentiment. So there was an innocence. I mean, there's a very hard aura about New York. I don't mean that disrespectfully.
No,
New Yorkers have a hard aura they embrace. Describe that innocence. I mean, like the police state basically that we went into for a while. I mean, is that kind of, I mean, because I have a hard time explaining this to my nephews who weren't alive. They're like, well, what do you mean the world changed? Right? It sounds silly to say. We had the internet. We had, I mean, nobody was taking selfies in front of the World Trade Center. Obviously, that was before that time. But
right.
It was the modern era. But just, I mean, you could still go up to the tarmac at the airport.
Oh God, yeah.
Now, no, it's not going to happen. So, without a ticket.
No.
So, I mean, there was so by no means do I mean that as a slight or anything. New Yorkers have always kind of had a lot of steel in their veins.
What's interesting is even right after it happened, New Yorkers have always been resilient.
That's more what I'm driving at.
New Yorkers have always been and will always be resilient. They've always had a dark humor about them. And they're amazing people. I don't think the rest of the country understands them, but they're great people. New Yorkers will give you the shirt off their back under the right circumstances. They really are. That's why it's a melting pot.
I suppose coming from, obviously, New York's a metro area of 20 million roundabouts.
Yeah, there's a lot of people.
I come from a metro area, there in New Orleans is only 1.6.
Yeah.
But that is a certain something that New Orleans can relate to New Yorkers on as far as being a melting pot and coming back, albeit from a completely different series of issues. In a way, similar though, because New York's got similar problems with the water level. I don't know. I've always found common cause in that way with New Yorkers, but that day, obviously, everybody stopped. I mean, friends of South Louisiana and South Mississippi, the Panhandle of Florida, that was engrossed everything. Well, that's a separate podcast, I suppose, as to how the world changed after 9/11. Wasn't something we set out to get into tonight. But so you leave high school, and as I understand it, you wound up going into the police department in the metro area, correct?
Yeah, I went to college, obviously, and after college, I got a job right out of college at St. Mary Hospital. I was working with the HIV and AIDS population. Actually, before I did that, I was working with autistic people, folks. I was doing child crisis intervention. I was working in a CCIS unit, Child Crisis Intervention.
And this is in New Jersey?
This is in New Jersey. Yeah. So I was working in an inpatient Child Crisis Intervention unit with suicidal and homicidal children and teens from age 5 to 17. It was a patient crisis unit. And we had autistic kids there and kids with all kinds of different serious forensic diagnoses. Some of them, I mean, I had 5-year-old kids who had tried to murder their parents, and it was wild. And then from there, I transitioned over to do HIV and AIDS individual family counseling,
and that was before, obviously.
That was right in the midst of the HIV and AIDS epidemic. I mean, we had folks who were passing away 3, 4, 5 a week, and it was bananas.
So you saw that illness at, I hate to frame it as a peak, but as
at the height of its
there wasn't a whole lot beyond palliative care.
Oh, there was no such thing.
I mean, I'm assuming beyond pain control at best.
Oh, there was no such. There were folks who were trying all kinds of holistic medicine. They were trying anything they could. I mean, it was.
So what do you? I'm asking because I was a young child at the time. You put them on a heavy opioid drip. I mean, was that about all that could be done?
Yeah.
At that late stage?
No, at that stage of the game, they weren't even doing anything like that. They were just letting them. I mean, they were literally just letting them waste away and pass away. They were making them comfortable, like you said, palliative care. They were just making them comfortable as possible and just letting them waste away and pass away.
So there's a lot of blame, of course. I know that shocks you that blame starts getting shifted around, but
no.
there was a lot.
Not really.
There was a lot of fingers in retrospect, hindsight pointed at the Reagan administration that they could have and should have done more. Do you think? And I don't have an answer here. This is setting you up here. Do you think that this is one of those? Okay, in retrospect, had they known to take it more seriously, they would have, or do you think it was just an abject failure of the Reagan administration to invest properly to respond to this crisis?
I don't think the Reagan administration. I don't think any administration knew what they would have been dealing with. I really don't. I don't think any administration could have done any better. I honestly don't.
Fair enough. So you go from working with autistic children to working in the midst of the height of the HIV crisis and in a big metropolitan area.
Yeah.
So that I'm sure that magnified the enormity of this.
Yeah.
To then being a cop.
Yeah, it was an interesting story how I even became a police officer. In the midst of me working with the HIV and AIDS population, a friend of mine was about to take the police exam, and he said to me, "Look, I don't want to take the police exam by myself. I'm nervous to take it." He said, "Can you do me a favor and could you take it with me?" So I had no interest in being a cop. So I actually signed up to take the test with him for moral support.
Not intending whatsoever.
Not intending at all.
See, you learned something of it you never told me.
Yeah, I never told you this story.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, this is crazy. So I had no intention of ever wanting to, no desire to be a law enforcement officer whatsoever. So the dude was like, "Look, can you take this test with me?" I said, "Sure." So the test was on a Saturday morning.
And this was for East
Orange. So up in New Jersey, you take tests for each municipality that you want to be a police officer. There's a state test, and then there's a test for each municipality. So I happened to take the test with this guy for for the municipality, for the city of East Orange. The test was on a Saturday morning. I went out Friday night, the night before the test, and I got obliviated. I got so drunk the night, and then Saturday morning, I went in there. The test was at a high school. And it was, back then, you would take the test, you'd have to fill in the bubbles with a number 2 pencil. I walked in there, I couldn't even see straight. I mean, I was so hungover. I walked in there, and I just answered the question. I read the questions, I didn't just go in there and just fill in.
So you didn't dial it in?
No.
You did try?
I read the questions. I went boop, boop. I read the questions.
No hanging chads.
No hanging chads. I just
All right.
answered the questions. I just wanted to get it over with.
You clearly did something right.
Well, this is the funny thing. East Orange had a budget freeze. So, 2 years after I took the test, I'm sitting in my office in St. Mary Hospital. 2 years later, after I took the test, my phone rings at my desk. And it was one of those weeks where, the state was coming in and we had to make sure all of our charting was up to speed, because I wasn't the best at keeping up with my patient notes and everything else. That's a self-admission. Anyway, so I was going back.
It was a lot different when we didn't have it all automated.
Yeah, and everything was paper notation, so you had to write everything in these charts.
Oh my God.
So I'm making sure all my charts were, and again, this was during the height of the epidemic, so I had over 100 and something clients, and I would have to make notes on a weekly basis. So the phone rings as I'm trying to clean up my charts, and I have a stack of charts on my desk. Phone rings, and it's this lieutenant, and I can't remember his name at this very moment. And he says, "Hey, is this Ian Haynes?" I said, "Yes. How can I help you?" He said, "My name is Lieutenant so-and-so. Do you remember taking the East Orange Police Department entrance exam?" I said, yeah, I do. I mean, how can I help you? He said, "Well, we had a hiring freeze because of budgetary reasons for the last 2 years. We just got an infusion of federal funds, and we can hire 6 people. You scored high, and you're number 2. You scored number 2 out of 136 guys, and we want to offer you a job."
Wow.
I'm like, I said, "Sir, with all due respect, I have a job, and I really like it." So the funny thing was, the week before, I had a conversation with my leadership, and they told me, in order for me to make more money, I'd have to go for my master's degree. And they said, at the time I was making I was making $27,500 a year. And this lieutenant says to me, so before I hang up with him, I look at all the stacks of files on my desk, and I was frustrated. I said, "By the way, how much does it pay?" He said, "Well, while you're in the academy, we'll pay you $27,500, and upon graduation, you'll make $32,000 a year to start." I didn't tell you the rest of the story from my boss, who said to me, after I got a master's degree, I'd get a raise to $34,000 a year. So I'd go from $27,500 to $34,000 a year.
After how much debt you would have had to take
After
on?
I incurred, who knows, another $10,000 in debt of getting a master's degree and 2 years of schooling.
That doesn't sound like a great bargain.
So I said to this lieutenant, I said, can I get back to you on this? He said, sure. He said, this was on a Monday. He said, please get back to me by Wednesday, or else I'm going to have to skip you and move on to the next person. I said, okay. So I went to my boss. I said, look, if I wanted to take a leave of absence for 6 months, could I do that? She said, yeah. She said, if you wanted to do that, you could take a 6 month leave of absence, your job would be secure, and you could come back. And I spoke to this lieutenant on Wednesday, and he said, if you don't like the job, you could always quit, and you can go back to what you were doing. And the rest is
history.
History.
So that started you on 12 years, 10
years.
10 years? I'm trying to remember. I know you told me, but